waking up to our white privilege, unpacking our biases, unpacking our white lens, doing this work, it's not to get to a place where then nothing bad will happen to you.
Well, because there's no such thing as like ally utopia. The shit that comes out of my mouth. Come up with. I don't understand where that came from. I don't even know where that came from.
Well, we're coining that term. There is no such thing as an ally utopia. Hey everyone, I'm Thais Sky. Welcome to Reclaim, a podcast for women by women on conversations that matter. Hello, Lindsey. I couldn't even get your name out properly. The name didn't even come out. Hello, Lindsey Rae.
I didn't even know you were starting to record.
I think that it's better this way.
You just were like, there you go.
I just want to get to like the behind the scenes things.
Well, give me this bag.
Wait, this big bag?
Well, yeah.
Both bags?
Both.
Oh my God.
You gotta do all the things in the closet so that we can maximize our
buffers.
This is our incubator.
People still don't believe that we do this in the closet.
Oh, we are in like just a regular closet.
We are also surrounded by frameworks.
So much psychotherapy, social justice, multicultural frameworks going on my closet floor right now.
We are going to bring to you some frameworks in this conversation today on your waking up to your white privilege.
Now what?
To really support the conversation of the structure of your awakening. Because, God, did I wish that I had a structure for my awakening.
Well,
in the beginning.
Yeah.
I didn't know there were structures. I didn't know there were frameworks. I didn't know that what I was experiencing is kind of common.
Well, I think ultimately it's one of those things where it's like, the more you know, it's just, you feel like you have more support, right?
Yes, exactly.
And so it's like, you already don't know anything when you're waking up. So it's like, you don't know anything, and then you feel like so ill-equipped.
Yeah.
And like unsupported in so many ways, and it's just like flailing.
It's literally
emotional flailing.
That's
psychological flailing. So much motherfucking flailing. And I think ultimately that's where a lot of the weapons of whiteness get used, right?
Of course.
In that flailing, because it's like,
we're trying so hard not to drown. We're trying so hard to find some sort of raft.
It's like, where's the ledge of the fucking pool?
That like we hit people and we're like knocking people off in our attempts to like get to oxygen.
It's because the learning curve is so steep
and painful. Especially if you got called out, you know. Some people don't have that opportunity to get called out, especially in public.
Or called in. So
their learning curve is a little bit more behind the scenes, and it can be slower. But for people who are being really called in a very loud way,
the like fire is lit.
You better wake up fast.
Right. And then it's like, okay, well, how? And what do I do? And where do I go? And who do I ask? And what do I... And even the things that I'm Googling, are they right?
Right.
Are they wrong?
Yes.
I don't know.
So one important thing that even before we begin that I think we must acknowledge is that there is no destination. And we may know this on like one level, but I don't think we really know this. So I'm saying it again to really remind us that
sometimes the shit that comes out of my mouth come up with... I don't understand where that came from. I don't even know where that came from.
Well, we're coining that term. There is no such thing as an ally utopia. No, this is officially a coined term here. Because there is no such thing. And that this is actually coming from a deep worthiness wound issue where it's like, if I become good, then nothing bad will happen to me. And so if I can become a good ally, if I can learn this stuff as fast as possible, then nothing bad can happen to me. Yeah. And I'll be safe and I'll be okay. And then I can breathe again. And so just like what Lindsey and I talk about a lot when we're doing work with our clients in terms of spiritual and psychological healing, it's like we have to remember that we're not doing this to get somewhere. This is a journey. This is the awakening process, and it's a lifelong experience.
Yeah, literally, like, what we are doing, the goal here is to increase our capacity to feel,
Yes.
to increase our vitality,
Yeah.
to move through the world with greater strength and resiliency. This is what we are doing. That is the goal. The goal isn't to get to some end
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't really necessarily, I don't even know if it necessarily exists yet, because I don't think we will see it in our lifetime.
No.
Like, the work that we will do in this lifetime is so potent and so important for future generations.
Absolutely. If we still have a planet in future generations.
I mean, that's a whole nother...
But yeah, so let's just we're going to be talking about frameworks today. There is one episode in season 1. I honestly can't remember what the fuck the episode
where you
name.
read...
I read off a framework. And so what we're going to do today is we're actually going to dissect it. We're going to share our stories, our anecdotes, our feelings and thoughts around every single step of a framework that we obviously have not created, and we'll share all the resources in the show notes for you all. But it's just a great way for us to begin to frame this conversation so that you have a little bit more structure, a little bit more understanding of what to expect in whatever stage you are, and then whatever stage is next. Because the point is, we want to remember that this is a process, this is a journey, so that let's remember that when we're feeling stuck. Let's remember that when we feel like we've arrived. Let's remember that when we feel like we're backtracking.
Oh, so good. Yeah. So important.
Yeah.
So important. And again, like always, I always think it's so imperative and important that we let everybody know Thais and I are not anti-racism experts or educators in any way, shape, or form. We are literally two white women stumbling,
psychotherapy grad students, life coaches,
literally just trying to stumble through this process of dismantling,
our stuff,
our
and we're just doing it out loud through a microphone in the closet.
Yeah, we're choosing to have part of it be public, and live.
Yeah. So you all,
the hardest one.
So you all can really not feel so alone. Because in many ways, this journey is one that we have to do alone. And in many ways, what Lindsey and I continue to find is that we have to reach out to people who are on this journey with us. And we have to lean on each other. And so we want our stories and our mistakes to be a way that you can feel like you've got this and you can do this. And this work is important and you are needed. And we need our white sisters to be waking up to this.
Absolutely, because we need everyone. We really do.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that, we have these conversations so that we can learn from one another. Because, if you happen to hear something that Thais and I have gone through or been through, and then literally the next day, that comes into your sphere.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wow, at least I have some sort of way to frame this experience, and maybe you can do less damage than maybe we did or whatever it is. And I think also another thing that's so important, and we say this often, is really the gift of walking through this kind of experience with your sisters.
Yeah.
And being able, there are so many things as white women we have to really be conscious of doing in public.
Yeah.
With expressing our feelings and emotions around it, because those expressions can be violent.
Yeah.
To, people of color and but they exist.
Mm-hmm.
Your expressions, your feelings, everything, they exist.
And diminishing it, minimalizing it, and pushing it down. I mean, I teach emotional resilience. Let me tell you what, it doesn't work. It only comes out in greater ways. It causes dis-ease in the body. It causes dis-ease in your life, in your environment. And so stuffing down emotions because someone told you you shouldn't feel those emotions, or you telling yourself you shouldn't feel those emotions, it doesn't work. But we do have to be conscientious of where we can place those emotions and
Absolutely.
with whom.
And that's what's so, I think, really refreshing and important about having community in your personal life. I'm not talking about sure, there are Facebook groups that you can totally join and everything, but actually in person, like in real life.
It makes
like,
such a difference.
The amount of times Thais and I call each other, text each other, FaceTime each other, like it is unreal.
It's the best. It's the best way to move through these stages, these frameworks. It's the best way to do it.
And it's like we run a lot of things through each other to just make sure, because, you know, I think Glennon Doyle talks about this so poignantly when she's like, it's like being in early recovery from addiction. You can't really trust yourself fully.
Yeah.
Like she wrote this whole beautiful post about it and related it to like kind of like your early stages of waking up. You can't really be trusted.
Yeah.
You know?
You don't really know what you don't know yet.
Yeah. And like, I think the problem is, you know, and a red flag, just like you were talking about earlier, is like when you feel like you got this.
Yeah.
That is a red flag to be like, whoa, slow your roll, sister.
Yeah.
Do you? Because I don't think we're ever going to get it.
No.
Fully.
No.
We're always going to need to check in and reality check ourselves, right?
So let's get into the frameworks.
Let's do it.
We have 2 here that I think we're going to bounce off of each other so that you can hear the papers crinkling.
Yeah. We're such grad students right now. So many papers.
And so because we're speaking to white women talking about waking up to white privilege, we're going to focus primarily on the stages of waking up to privilege. But I just want to point out that there are frameworks for waking up to your oppression. And as women, we are oppressed in our patriarchal culture. And if you don't conform to, let's say, cis heteronormativity, you may find oppression in those identities as well. So we'll briefly talk about oppression because I think that that's helpful for us as we're moving through maybe some of our more oppressed identities. But the focus of this conversation is on our privilege, where we have advantages in our society because of our certain identities, and how we can begin to shift our awakening from being unconscious of our privileges to being fully conscious of them. Okay. So in this particular framework, it calls level 1 the pre-awareness, where you conform to majority norms and values, and you believe that those are universal. I mean, come on. This is talk about the spiritual community, where so many people operate under this idea that, at least I did, that my beliefs around the universe and about God were universal. Like everyone should be believing these things. They'd be crazy not to.
Well, and that's kind of breaches into group thinking.
Absolutely. So then we have here accepts cultural stereotypes of the oppressed group. We have believes their own group is better than others. Is unaware of or denies their own privileged status, accepts it as normal and deserved, has access to valued societal resources, and believes in a just world in which meritocracy determines personal outcomes. That means I deserve the good things I have in life. This is where most white people start off. I see myself in every single one of those goddamn things.
Oh. I mean, most of them, yeah.
Like, maybe I didn't overtly feel that my group is better than other people, but I definitely had this sense that being white was somehow superior. Like, I never named it. Like, I would never say that out loud because I don't see race. I don't see color. I'm a good person, right? Quote unquote. But I definitely had this feeling like we're better. Because I would never want to trade my life,
of course,
with a black or brown person.
You know where I think I can see this in my life, growing up and really thinking like when other people would speak other languages. I literally can remember this very distinctly, like becoming aware of my thinking around it. It was, I think, you know, my early 20s, like, or even late teens, like when I would hear somebody speak another language, I would automatically kind of like have this thought of like, oh, well, like they're clearly not like smart enough to learn English.
I'm an immigrant, Lindsey.
And
I've had those same thoughts.
I mean, wow.
Because I'm like, I learned English.
Yeah, like why can't you?
Why can't you? Why can't you assimilate? I assimilated. So why are you still holding on to your language? Or like when people, say, if you work in customer service, like you shouldn't have an accent because people can't hear you. People can't understand you. And we have these thoughts. Yeah. We say these thoughts out loud.
Yeah.
We, make fun of Chinese people and their accents when we're ordering Chinese food.
Absolutely.
I mean, so there's
these very small, nuanced things that we don't even necessarily pick up on because they've become so common.
And because right here, it's normalized. It's cultural stereotypes, and we just believe it. We conform to these norms and values. We think that they're how everyone sees everything. Right. Mm-hmm. So in this stage of the racial identity framework or just the privilege identity framework, you basically believe that you're on some level superior, and therefore you feel like you can take up way more space than somebody who's inferior.
It's interesting because like the only one on this list that I don't fully believe is the last one, which I deserve the good things I have in life.
But did you feel like you saw that within the communities that you live in, particularly because you come from a lower class?
Yeah.
But lower class white people.
I think that was a learned behavior somehow, because like the classism and because I grew up in a very multicultural, like diverse, socioeconomical class, right? Because it was low.
Yeah.
And so like I grew up and my class changed the older I got.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of my therapeutic work has been this deep worthiness wound, really, of like, I literally do not feel like I deserve what I have.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Like literally.
Yeah.
So I
wonder if what part of that is because of your oppressed identities.
Yes.
Right? Because being of a low socioeconomic class is an oppressed identity. Being a woman is an oppressed identity.
Right.
So maybe you've internalized that. But here's what, so Lindsey and I had to read a few books for our classes that are about the working poor. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that really stuck to me was how people from low socioeconomic class, they don't blame the system for their poverty.
No, they blame themselves.
They blame themselves.
Like me and my family, it was always like, we should be working harder.
And that's what this is saying,
We are lazy.
Lindsey. Yeah.
Like,
that's what meritocracy is saying. So it says in a world where meritocracy determines your outcomes. That means if you work hard, if you have the right merits, then you'll be successful.
Yes.
And so people who tend to be the most oppressed, they don't see how there's things pushing against them.
Because they have this thinking.
Yeah.
And as a system, we've actually placed and pushed that thinking on them.
Yeah.
And that's why it is so problematic and it is so violent when a white person turns to a person of color and says, well, we all worked really hard to get here, didn't we?
Yeah. Yes.
Because
the level of work is not at all the same.
Very, very different.
So so there's another framework here, and their first stage is called contact.
This is 6 stages of
whiteness. Racial identity development. So it says a lack of awareness of cultural and institutional racism and of one's own white privilege, obviously. So you have no awareness of it. This stage often includes naive curiosity about or fear of people of color based on stereotypes learned from friends, family, or the media. Those whose lives are structured so as to limit their interaction with people of color, as well as their awareness of racial issues, may remain at this stage indefinitely. Like I was talking to my friend yesterday and I shared how there's a beliefs among white people that there's kind of 2 types of black people.
Okay.
There's like the good black people who assimilate and who work hard. Who
are like whitewashed.
Well, now I know that that's what it is.
Oh, okay.
But before,
okay. Oh, I understand.
It's like Obama is a good black guy.
Oh, right. Because he went to Harvard.
And he doesn't consider really himself black. He's not owning his blackness, right?
Okay, yeah.
But then there's like kind of like the shamed black people, like the ones who live in ghettos and the ones who like wear the baggy pants and who like say fuck white people. And I used to think, honest to God, well, then of course they're never going to be successful. Look at how they look at white people.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Wow.
Like, I know to be a normal thought process that white people have. Like, if you're not accepting of me as a white person and you're prejudiced against me as a white person,
how would you ever,
then you're not going to change. If you don't assimilate into our culture, if you don't get out of your community, if you don't, try to get a job and like clean up and clean up your act.
We've deemed all of that behavior and where you live and what you do as bad.
Yeah. If you don't speak English, right? If you speak AVE, if you don't even speak like in a way that I as a white person
proper
can understand, then how are you supposed to be successful?
Right, because we, as white people, hold the dominant power.
Right. So that's a belief I had. So you see, this is the belief where somehow white people are superior. And we can even say, oh, I know that I've gotten better education. We can even name that in this stage. Like, oh, I know that like I've had a better upbringing. But the underlying mentality is, but you can make it because we live in a world where if you pull yourself up by the bootstraps, you can make it too.
Right. And like we had this discussion in class. It's like, well, what if you don't even have any bootstraps?
Yeah. If you don't have boots.
Literally.
If you don't even give them straps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
this is
then what are you supposed to pull yourself up by?
This is the stage where I think everybody that kind of starts out in very white-based communities. This is where most people start out who are white. I do want to quickly name the oppression section here of this first stage. So it says conforms to majority norms and values, right? So whitewashed, you conform to the same values even though it's against your own group. Mm-hmm. You deprecate your own group and you appreciate the majority group. You accept negative stereotypes about your own group. Is self-deprecating and self-blaming, has low access to societal resources, and believes in a just world, i.e., I don't deserve more than I have. So this is kind of like the belief systems of people who are in an oppressed group. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's move to level 2.
Okay, this would be disintegration in the 6 stages of the radical identity, racial identity development. I don't like to read out loud, so you're going to just be reading all this.
Okay. Increased interaction with people of color or new information about racism may lead to a new understanding, which marks the beginning of this stage. In this stage, the bliss of ignorance or lack of awareness is replaced by the discomfort of guilt, shame, and sometimes anger at the recognition of one's own advantage of being white and the acknowledgement of the role of whites in maintaining a racist system. Attempts to reduce discomfort may include denial or attempts to change significant others' attitudes towards people of color. We other the problem. We say, if I can help other white women wake up, then I don't have to deal with my own internalized racism, right? Societal pressure to accept the status quo may lead the individual from disintegration to reintegration.
And I think this is like a very loaded phase, right? Or stage. Because
when you start reaching discomfort,
there's a lot of fucking anger that starts happening.
Oh, yeah.
Anger out externally to the systems, the institutions, the fact that this even exists.
Yes.
And then a lot of internal anger and rage. Like, how could I be this bad? How could I uphold these systems?
Yeah.
Like, how could I be so morally corrupt?
Yeah. How could I have participated in this? I was harming people and I didn't even know it.
And that, I mean, a lot of anger, a lot of rage, a lot of deep sadness, and a lot of fucking pain comes.
Well, and most people can't stand to be in this place.
Because it's too uncomfortable.
And so that's what they call it, like, you're shaming me.
Right.
Because
we
feeling
immediately
shame,
go to defensive.
Because shame is a natural part of the process.
Oh, yes. Like when we talk so much about emotions because they're so important, and we talk a lot about increasing your bandwidth, right? And
raising the temperature,
yes,
your emotional temperature.
The ability to actually, like get in bed with the quote unquote bad, negative, painful emotions, right? And that's why all of your work, all of your spiritual work, all of your therapeutic work, everything that you've done in like the personal development space, to hopefully increase your capacity to feel.
Yeah. We've talked about this so much.
This is what we need here.
In our studies, we're really recognizing how hard it is for us to marry this concept that we can be both a good person and a bad person simultaneously.
I wrote a whole damn paper on it.
About her racial identity and not being able to...
The good racist.
Yes.
The good racist. If anybody wants it, I'm happy to send it to you.
And it's really about how hard it is when we're in this stage. We start to feel like, what if I really am a bad person? Because we all have this deep sense within us, this deep fear that we really are the bad person and that we're going to be found out as being the bad person. That's why we create so many shields and so many defense mechanisms, because we're terrified that we're going to be called out. We're terrified that people are going to find out that we really are bad people.
And how do we then, move into the exception of the fact that we can be both good and bad?
Exactly.
Look,
oh, yeah. It's called
it out right here.
The Good Racist, a Kleinian analysis of the well-intentioned white woman by Lindsey Rae.
I mean, this was a damn interesting paper. And this was me unpacking my own shit.
Because Lindsey had her own journey of really facing and forcing to face the fact that we have a place within us that is bad. And when we're waking up to our white privilege, some of the ways that people choose to wake up white people is by calling them bad.
Yeah.
You're trash. You're bad. You're a bad person because you're white. And so that may feel really hard for us to accept because it's affirming the fact that we do feel bad. And so there's two things that happen. Either we're like, oh my God, we are bad. Or I'm not listening to anything that you're saying because I'm terrified of what that may mean about me.
And ultimately, when we start to bring these conflicting ideologies of the self and the world into each other, it causes a lot of anxiety.
A lot of anxiety.
Because we don't know what the fuck to do. And there's so much emotion that just erupts from
So know what I see? A lot of people are here. They're in their disintegration phase. They're just starting to understand what's going on. But because they're so loaded with guilt, they're so loaded with shame, they take action. And you know what actions they take, Lindsey? Let's talk about the actions that Thais took.
Oh, your Pokemon?
Let's...
Your Pokemon extravaganza?
Collecting women of color like their Pokemons. Yes, that is one thing I did. But the other thing that Thais Sky did was I immediately went to my website and I started changing all photos.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I started changing all photos because I wanted to be inclusive.
Oh my gosh. I remember you sending me all the photos.
I need to be inclusive.
You were like, and what about this one? And what about this one? And what about that one?
But I don't want
to. I can use this one?
But I don't want to.
I don't know.
I don't want to tokenize, Black people, but I want to look inclusive. So how can I fix my website immediately so that I look inclusive? So that's what I did. Thais did that. Mm-hmm. Thais also did let's use lots of quotes from Black feminist authors and sprinkle them everywhere. Because if I'm using Black quotes, hello, I'm inclusive.
Well, it's just another layer of trying to shield.
I'm trying to take action so that I don't feel the shame of the helplessness and the hopelessness. Because in this phase, it tends to be oh my God, I'm waking up to this. What do I do? What do I do? Mm-hmm. What do I do now? And Lindsey and I now hear that when someone asks that, what do I do? What do I do? It's because they're not really doing the work. Because if you 100%. Were really doing the work, you would know what to do. And it's not changing photos on your website. But that's what I did.
And, it's part of the process.
I also changed my bio and made sure that I called myself an intersectional feminist.
Oh, we just had this whole conversation and unpacked that.
I did that. Mm-hmm. Because I wanted to appear like a good white woman. I didn't know that that's what I was doing, though. I just didn't want to cause additional harm. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh my God, my very existence harms people. So I'm going to try to undo that by calling as quickly as possible, by changing all these things, changing all the language, calling myself an intersectional feminist, and then I'll be inclusive, and then I won't do harm. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. When you're calling yourself something that you're not quite filling out yet, why are you really calling yourself that, if not to shield yourself? Mm-hmm. It's a form of protection. What is calling yourself an intersectional feminist really doing? It's you taking space in space that is not yours to take up. Mm-hmm. And I didn't recognize that I was doing any of this until like a month or two ago when I really started to look at the journey, my past process. And luckily, a few months later, I removed all the intersectional feminists and I removed all the Audre Lorde quotes and removed all the photos of like...
Okay, hang on a second. I need to like just backtrack a little bit here.
Yeah. Let me get into like the work.
And doing it from a place of understanding.
Yes.
And true integration.
Not reactivity.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing. I was reacting from the shame.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, I just lost it and was like
Lindsey just climbed into a hole.
I was like a screaming, like, I don't even know. Like, literally, I feel like I was just screaming at everyone for like weeks.
Yeah.
Like, my friends, my partner, no one could get in a word edgewise.
Yeah.
No one. Even if they were agreeing with me, I was just irate. I was just, how could we do this? What the fuck? Oh my God. And that was just my process in not being able to understand, that I can hold all of this at once.
Yeah, it's hard. And I know that this is also a stage where there's a lot of anger towards other white women. Mm-hmm. I know I've written plenty of Facebook posts that were pretty angry.
Oh, yeah.
Like
I have too.
I was pissed.
I had people checking on me. No, like family members literally like checking on me like, hey, is everything okay? I'm like, no, everything is not okay. Have you seen the fucking news? Do you know what's going on? Nothing is okay. I mean, I was real and that anger was it was rightfully
it's
so.
Holy. Anger is holy. It's a holy emotion. It's, and I gave myself full permission to be in the anger. I allowed myself to be angry. And I think we all need to work on developing a new relationship with our anger.
Yeah.
Because this is something that we've been taught as white women that we should not be angry
at all. Like there's no place for it.
But like the patriarchy wants women to stay docile so we don't question, the system. So like we have to give space to our anger. We have to bring it out. We have to be in the fire of our anger.
Absolutely. My whole thing was like, I knew it was not completely integrated yet because it was so flooding to my system.
Yeah.
That it was like I became disenfranchised. Is that the word that I want to use?
I don't think so.
No. Like I became like shattered because of it. Like I
disintegrated. Look, that's the name of the stage.
Yeah. I mean, like I literally couldn't formulate full sentences.
Yeah.
I couldn't think because I was so flooded.
Yeah.
Like it just overtook everything. And that wasn't a place that I knew I wasn't going to be able to enact anything, any change or make any kind of impact from that place.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, how can I welcome my anger, utilize my anger, work with my anger, allow it to be there, but not allow it to flood me to where nothing happens, nobody listens to me, and like I'm just like all over the place.
Yeah.
I'm not directed, I'm not poignant.
Yeah. I hear that. I really hear that. And I feel like now, because we're so much further down this framework, when I see people's anger, to me, I can hold space for it. Because I know that it's just a phase. I know that it's just a space that they have to be in. I allow people to be in their anger. I don't shame them to being in that anger. And I think that's what's so helpful about these frameworks, is that it helps us to then see other people where they're at and hold space for where they're at. Mm-hmm. So anger, shame, guilt, these are inevitable parts of waking up to our privilege. And it doesn't matter how we were woken up. We could have been woken up in the nicest way, with like gentle pushes and little feathers tickling our back. Or we could have been pushed by someone being really angry and pushing us off the ledge, and we're flailing as we're falling thousands of feet. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you wake up. It's gonna be brutal.
And mind you, may I just point out, these emotions and feelings are not only inevitable experiences of waking up, they are inevitable experiences of being human. Remember that. Absorb it. take it in.
Well, that's why I think this is why we keep talking about this, to be honest. Because waking up to my white privilege helped me wake up to my own humanity.
Yes.
In a way that, because I was, white supremacy robs people of their humanity. And so the lens that I was wearing.
All of us.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Right. And the lens that I was wearing was robbing people and was robbing myself. And so by waking up to my privilege, I started to be feeling more sovereign and feeling more human and then feeling more connected to other humans and to other people's suffering. I was able to hold more because I wasn't carrying around this lens that was violating their space. But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So here's in the other, because we have two frameworks that we're reading from.
We're going back and forth.
Yeah. So here's the other framework. It calls level 2 encounter. And it's the same thing. Becomes aware of privilege, acknowledges that privilege is connected to a group status, becomes aware of discrimination and stereotyping, is uncomfortable with the possibility of self as oppressor, experiences cognitive dissonance, conflict or guilt, experiences conflict with prior views of self and others. Now, this is the privilege. Let me read real quick the oppression level 2. Becomes aware of oppression as member of own group, has conflicting views of self and others, is conflicted over valuing self and valuing dominant group, is aware of oppressed status of one's own entire group, experiences relief, it's not my fault, and becomes angry about the injustice and harm to self and group. So anger is a very primitive, if you think about it, experience. By primitive, I mean like early in the framework.
Okay.
Like it's when, like, if we see our framework as awakening, like mature, like a level of maturity spectrum.
It's like a ladder almost.
Yeah. If we think about it that way, then I see that shame, guilt, and anger are signs that we're still very much in the awakening, the primitive,
just the early stages.
Because I keep saying primitive because these are primitive emotions.
Well, all of
they're
them.
They're not very nuanced. They're not very complex emotions. Shame, guilt, and anger are pretty much like primal, don't you think? Like they're basic primal emotions, like
I don't
fear, pleasure, anger, shame.
I'm not sure shame is.
Am I making things up here?
No, I don't think you're making things up. I know where you're heading, and I know where you're coming from. The thing is I just am not sure that shame has been around since the early days. Do you know what I'm saying? Like when we're talking primitive, I'm thinking we're in caves.
I don't know. I kind of feel like it is because that's how groupthink works. You're shamed from leaving the group or shamed from creating behavior that is going to expunge you from the group.
Yeah, well, that's more, I guess, that's like when, tribalism comes into play, the collective, like, I don't know. I mean, because like all my research and stuff and like my current knowledge of, emotions and feelings, like primary emotions, secondary feelings, things like that, it's one area where like no fucking body can agree. Like, it's like some schools of thought think that there are only two emotions, pleasure or
pain, fear,
unpleasurability or whatever. Others think there are 4, love, fear, pleasure, whatever. And then others think there are like 9, I mean, it's all over the map.
I think I'm seeing maybe a pattern is awakening to complexity and emotional maturity is further down the framework, and emotional immaturity and simplistic dichotomous thinking is seen more in the early parts of the framework, because
absolutely
you can't move from stage to stage of this framework without expanding your capacity to be with more of your emotions, to hold conflicting views, right? The fact that you're a good person and a bad person.
Because this is development.
Yeah.
This is basic development,
so, Yeah, I got it. Okay. Integration is the next stage.
Reintegration.
Reintegration. At this point, the desire to be accepted by one's own racial group, in which the overt or covert belief in white superiority is so prevalent, may lead to a reshaping of the person's belief system to be more congruent with the acceptance of racism. The guild guilt. I think it's supposed to say guilt. The guilt and anxiety may be redirected in the form of fear and anger directed towards people of color who are now blamed as a source of discomfort. It is easy for whites to become stuck at this stage of development, particularly if avoidance of people of color is possible. So this is an interesting phase because this is saying like...
Yeah, it's like kind of when it's like you get like warped back.
Yes.
And I think... a lot of times, these stages it's not very clear, like, oh, I'm stepping from this one to this one. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it is. Mm-hmm. A lot of times you kind of go back and forth, in and out.
Well, this one is really, I think, about resentment at people of color for making us feel our racial insecurity.
Or just feeling in general.
Wow.
Don't we get pissed off? I mean, like, let's think about it for a minute. Don't you get really angry and pissed off when anyone makes you feel pain?
Absolutely.
Then there we have it.
Yeah.
So obviously this is a very human, kind of like response or reaction. I mean, it's just like, okay, people, let's call it what it is. Let's see it for what it is. And let's freaking do something about it.
I think that at this stage, this is where I think a lot of white spiritual women, they peeked into the conversation of social justice.
And they're like, oh, hell no. This hurts too much. This is too much work. No. No, I'm going to go back to my nice, cozy little life in my privileged little bubble.
Ridiculous.
Ooh, pop the bubble. No, fuck you. How to get my bubble back? Can you patch the hole in my bubble? Please.
Right. It's like they see the anger. They see the anger of people of color. They see the hurt, the resentment, all of the stuff. And they go, I can't handle that.
Too much humanness for me.
So they justify why they're entitled to shut back down by saying...
Because they hurt me, they shamed me, they're too angry, they're too this, they're too that, whatever. And listen, it's like, that's where we kind of like put our fragility on blast.
Yep.
It's like...
I think reintegration is an interesting stage because the mistake that people make by being in reintegration is once you start waking up to your whiteness, you can't really unsee it. So now you're living with some serious cognitive dissonance.
Yes. And we literally, okay, so I'm not joking. When I tell you this is what Thais and I talk about all the time, I'm not kidding. We should put a screenshot of like some of our text messages. I literally sent her a text message 2 days ago.
I took a screenshot of it, actually.
2 days ago, I literally sent you a text message and I go, question, isn't
right here.
Cognitive dissonance the like epitome of white supremacy or something?
Yes, and I go, tell me more. And you say, like, I really value how I treat other people. It's super important to me. I would never want to do anything to hurt others. Yet I have done so much harm as a white person who is not awake for so long. So, like, is that the definition of cognitive dissonance? And then she read to me the definition, which is the occurrence of cognitive dissonance is a consequence of a person performing an action that contradicts personal beliefs, ideals, and values, and also occurs when confronted with new information that contradicts said beliefs, ideals, and values. And I go, absolutely, which is why then the conclusion must be either one, obviously I'm not racist. Like I could never be racist. I'm a good white person. I don't see color. I've never contributed. I have a black boyfriend. I have a black mom. I have a black dad. I have everybody's black in my life.
Right.
Can't possibly be racist.
I did DNA. I'm 3% this and 0.2%.
My past life, I was a black person.
Yeah.
So either to do that or two, oh my God, I'm the worst person in the world.
Like, yeah.
I'm the worst person in the world.
Mm-hmm. So, and listen, everyone, this is a conversation we had 2 days ago. Yeah. Literally 2 days ago. So it's like we are constantly circling back. We're constantly saying, oh, this, going back, forth, left,
this
right,
is also reintegration is also the stage where we get resentful for people, like we get like some of our more covert beliefs about black people come up.
Yes, which, oh my gosh, I mean, that's what,
like, we start to really see how like we're resentful of black people for being successful.
And it's like those are that's where you get like real mind fucked.
Yeah.
Because
this is a mind fuck stage.
They come up and you're like, oh my God, how could I fucking think that?
Yeah.
I am so fucking bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, don't you think, and I'm thinking that we then have to check ourselves and make sure we are reminding ourselves that we have been taught this.
Yeah.
These are learned behaviors.
And it's important for us to remember that, you know, as white people, we have a tremendous amount of responsibility. And we have to do everything we can to dismantle the system once we're awake that we've been upholding it. But we're not to blame for the system because we were born with the system already there. Mm-hmm. So of course we participate, we uphold it, we keep going. But it's kind of like this. I like think of like if there's like 10 people holding up a tent, right? And then you're born holding up the tent. It's like, okay, you've got to do your part, peoples. Like you've got to look at the weight that you've been carrying and this tent that you've been upholding. Mm-hmm. But it's not your fault that the tent's been there. It's been there since way before you came around. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes that we take on this idea that we are responsible, that we are bad people because we are responsible for whiteness.
And especially if you have any kind of really large amounts of Aquarius in your chart. Because you will just feel responsible for everyone all the time, all the things, every bad thing all the time.
But don't you think, like, you know what I think? Oh, you know what I think? I think taking over responsibility, like responsibility for something that's not yours to take responsibility, is a way that we deny ourselves taking real responsibility. I actually coach my clients through this because look, if I'm like now I'm taking on responsibility of Lindsey's, okay, so Lindsey did something, I'm taking responsibility for it, then I get to feel so bad. I can't believe I did that. I'm such a bad person. How could I have done that? I get to feel so overwhelmed by how bad I am that I don't actually take action.
It will paralyze you.
I don't get to do anything. And isn't that such a great cop-out?
Well, here's the thing.
It's a great cop-out.
Here's the thing. That's why... That made me nervous.
I know. Her dress started...
Moving. Okay. Oh, it's going to fall. That's why.
Well, if you hear a big crash...
Well, you'll know why. Okay, wait. What was I going to say?
Responsibility.
Oh, that's why... perfectionism in women is such a huge part of the patriarchal structure of keeping us oppressed.
Yeah. Because if we're so obsessed
with being perfect
and not seeing anything, you know, being objectified and having everything to be perfect, then we don't have to look at what the actual problem is. So if you're in a state where you're completely overwhelmed by your badness and you're feeling completely overwhelmed, I just want you to know that that's a coping strategy that you've developed at a very young age to help you deal with some pretty overwhelming things. Mm-hmm. I also want you to kindly note that this is a cop-out. Now, I'm not saying take away the coping strategy. I'm not judging it. I'm just letting you know that it is a coping strategy and it's copping out from you doing the real work.
This is what Dr. B would say, who's my therapist. Notice that.
Yeah. It's important to know. It's important to know when we're using these strategies. And then it's also really important to know that we're doing it so that we don't have to take responsibility for what is ours. Let go of the responsibility of what is not ours. Like white supremacy, I didn't build it. And I'm not going to bear the burden and the shame and the guilt of something that I didn't build. Mm-hmm. I am, though, going to look at how I participate and how I'm not dismantling it every single day.
And you will bear that burden.
I will bear my burden. I will not bear yours.
I will tell you.
I will not bear yours.
How, and this, for people who have struggled with codependency, this will be also very hard and a lot of your work. And I come definitely from that space of like, when you learn how to only hold your burden instead of attempting to hold everyone else's, shit gets real.
Yes, it does. Because now you have no excuses. Now you have to bear your burden. Mm-hmm. And we prefer to bear things that are not our responsibility so that we don't actually then have to show up.
Yeah, and it's almost, in some ways too, it's like, well, if I just keep everybody else's burden and I feel all that pain, it's so overwhelming it's so overwhelming that it prevents me from taking any action.
Yeah.
And therefore, even though I'm feeling pain, it will probably be less painful.
Yeah.
Than actually like taking action and dealing with my own.
Yeah.
For sure.
Whew, okay. Whew. So
all right.
next
Keep going.
next stage in the framework.
Pseudo-independent.
Information seeking about people of color often marks the onset of this stage. The individual is abandoning beliefs in white superiority, but may still believe in ways that unintentionally perpetuates the system. Looking to those targeted by racism to help her understand, the white person often tries to disavow her own whiteness through active affiliation with persons of color. We're going to talk about this. The individual experiences a sense of alienation from other whites who have not yet begun to examine their own racism, yet may also experience rejection from persons of color who are suspicious of their motives. Ooh, this is the stage. Persons of color moving from the encounter to immersion phase of their own racial identity development may be particularly unreceptive to a white person's attempts to connect with them. Ooh.
And we see this happening
all the time. I think this is the stage that I was in the most.
Oh, yeah. I mean, hello.
Okay, so this is what we do at this stage. We call up all of our black friends, and we're like, can you help me? Can you tell me what's going on?
And we try to get more black friends.
Or
indigenous friends, or Latina, or Latinx, and like all the things. We're like, oh, well, I'm just going to diversify the fuck out of my friends.
Yeah.
And that way I'll be protected.
We try to like hide our whiteness, you know? We try to pretend like, oh, I'm not white.
We try to deny it, right?
Yes.
We try to like literally deny our culture of origin.
Yes. Yep. And then, the individual experiences a sense of alienation from other whites. I mean, I lost so many friends. So many relationships, so many people.
When I started talking about this online, people defriended me. Like, they were dropping, like, I don't even know what.
Yeah.
It was really wild to witness.
Yeah.
Just the amount of pushback. And even the amount of people checking on me. Are you okay?
Right.
Is everything all right? You know, like, just like this clear, just like disconnect.
Well, and in this stage, this is when I wanted people of color to give me cookies, right? This is when I would post something that's like anti-racism.
And you're like, hello!
Why aren't you liking it? Why aren't you like approving me? Like, why aren't I, you know, especially anti-racism educators and people who I were connecting with.
Because you're like, look at me, I'm doing all the work, I'm doing so good. Oh my God, I am one of the good white people.
But that wasn't my, this is the difficulty, right? Because that wasn't my conscious thought. My conscious thought was, I'm doing good work and hopefully they'll see it and they'll see that I'm actually true and genuine and I'm doing good work. So please like and comment.
Please like, comment, and share my shit.
So like
Give me all the likes.
A lot of the things that I was posting at that time was like from the place of, I hope that they will like it. I hope that they will see it. I hope that they will validate me.
It's more of like that. It's almost like traits of codependency of like, I'm more worried about what everyone else thinks of me than of what I'm actually doing and how I'm integrating this in my life.
Yeah.
And I think, I actually think that being massively codependent and having a shit ton of therapy around codependency has actually helped me significantly on this journey.
Oh, interesting.
I really do. I think it's helped me like a lot.
Well, it's hard. It's hard because, you know, we're trying to move through this framework in a way that like makes sense for our lives and holds space for our humanity. While, let's be honest here, we're operating from a larger conversation that is very, in many ways, dehumanizing and very much wants to strip away our experience because there's no space for our experience because we cause harm with our experiences.
Yeah.
So like it's difficult because on the one hand, we are causing harm by being ignorant to our whiteness. And then on the other hand...
Or actively refusing it or denying it or
absolutely.
all of the above.
But at the same time, on the other hand, it's like we're moving through this framework and we have to hold our humanity with it. And I think that that's what our friendship has meant to me. right? Because it's meant that like on the outside into the world, you know, I can be purposeful that I am no longer supporting whiteness and then I'm dismantling it and I'm doing the work there. But then, you know, in my relationship, I can come to you in my weakness and I can come to you in my fears and I can come to you with my, why didn't this person of color like my thing? What does this mean about me?
Like in all the messiness of it.
Right.
Because it's a fucking mess.
It's a mess. And it's hard.
It is
and
fucking messy.
Very easy to dehumanize ourselves in the process.
Absolutely.
And to shame ourselves into being somewhere different on the framework. You know, I had that experience where I shamed myself. I wanted to be further along than I was. And like we said at the very beginning, we have to remember that this is a process, that there is no ally utopia.
I still can't believe
it was brilliant. What you said was brilliant. And we've got to be just a little, we have to be kind to ourselves. Because again, we're not to blame for the system. We're to really look at our participation, but we do not bear the burden of a system that we were born into.
And it's one of those things where it's like, we really have to find this beautiful dance between not taking it personally and taking it personally.
Exactly.
And it's really and both. It's really holding both.
Well, and only now, actually, do I feel like I do this.
Oh, yeah.
Now.
And I mean, I still feel like, personally, I have to check myself all the time. I'm like, whoa, am I taking this too personally? Am I taking this personally enough?
Yeah.
Like, I have to constantly be asking myself these questions.
We've been at this for, I think, 2 years? So
You've been on it longer than I have.
It's still, I mean, it's 2 years is like nothing in the grand scheme of things. But
I'm like a baby in this. I'm like a year in.
But, you know, we just have to remember that when we take things too personally and we make meaning about who we are, there's probably a worthiness wound at play.
Well, absolutely, 100.
And then we're not able to really hold space for other people and their pain. And that's the whole point of this, is to learn the space that we're taking up that is inappropriate and learn how to take up space in the way that's more appropriate and more respectful of each other.
I think it's important to just recognize that, like, we all are human and we all are operating from these very human places.
Yeah.
Everyone.
And hey, this is hard, because what we're also talking about here, FYI, is holding humans to Trump. Like holding the humanity of Trump. We're talking about holding humanity to the Republican Party. We're talking about holding humanity to men who want nothing more than to take away our rights, our reproductive rights, to take away our ability to make decisions about our body, to take away, you know, our rights, period. We're talking about
any and all access to power.
It's very easy to dehumanize those in power because we're angry, and I hear that. And it's important that the more we hold space for our own humanity, that we spread that space to others. That's not saying accept. That's not saying condone. That's not saying, you know, allow it to happen. But while we're othering other people, we're punishing ourselves.
Well, and I think that's another just very, very big, important step in just personal development in general, is learning how to hold space for someone's humanness that is really doing bad things. You know, and their behavior is
I'm
harming.
saying all this from a very mentalized state of mind.
Very intellectualized.
Because hell no, I have not internalized that shit. Hell no, I'm not sitting here being like, I love Trump. No, that's not first off, that's not what we're saying. But second of all, no, I don't hold space for Republicans who want to take away my rights. No, I don't. But that's, you know, that's my work.
Yeah, I mean,
we're moving towards.
We're always working in that space of like, okay, you know, let's see this person's humanity. What has happened to them to where they've come to believe this?
It's so hard to do that.
It's very difficult, but I tell you something, we cannot escape it because we are involved in it every single day when we go to school.
Yes.
Every single time we show up to this program that we have decided to do in becoming a therapist, this is literally the technique that we cannot run from.
Yeah.
And we both have had very, very charged experiences with it already.
Yeah.
I personally had a huge moment where I realized that I had stripped away every single person's humanity in my class.
Yeah.
And I was just in a mode where I couldn't see it. And I had to really check myself there and go, whoa, okay, just because I'm standing up for what I believe is right, I'm standing up for people of color, I'm standing up for, like, let's not act from our whiteness, In doing that, I literally stripped away humans' experience, real humanity from all of my classmates.
Yeah.
And that was not okay.
Yeah.
I mean, these are human beings who I am going to travel the next 2 years of my life with.
Yeah.
And I was treating them in a very inappropriately,
Yeah. All right, so let's move on. The next phase. It's called immersion. Uncomfortable with her own whiteness, yet unable to be truly anything else, because hello, you can't change the color of your skin. The individual may begin searching for a new, more comfortable way to be white in this stage. Learning about whites who have been anti-racist allies to people of color is an important part of this process. Whites find it helpful to know that others have experienced similar feelings and have found ways to resist the racism in their environments, and they are provided with important models for change.
I think this is what we right now are attempting and hopefully doing. Like, we are literally trying to provide important model for change through our own experience. We are, talking about our experience and our feelings. We're sharing with you how we hold each other's experience and feelings.
There's a lot of conversations that say that men have no space in feminist conversations. But I actually think that it's important for us to invite men in some circles, not all circles.
Right.
Because, they have the most power and we need them. Like, unless we're planning on drowning, thinning the crop here and drowning men.
Let's just send them all to an island.
We kind of have to work with them. And it's the same thing. There's a lot of conversations that's saying that white people shouldn't be anti-racism educators. And I hear that argument. I hear that beautifully. And I also think that there's so much beautiful space necessary to read from and listen to and, bring into our circles white people who are doing
exemplifying
this.
And doing it well.
Yeah.
Because this is a very important aspect of just how we learn, right?
Because we are white. We can't now be people of color. That is not how that works.
Right.
And so we've got to find role models for how to be white in a way that doesn't perpetuate harm.
Absolutely. It's a phase of learning. It's how we go about it. We find people that are doing it. You see it in business all the time, or in mentorship. It's you find someone that's doing it well, and then you learn from them because you learn from their example. You kind of mimic a little bit of their behavior at first too, because you don't know what the fuck you're doing, and then, it starts integrating. You start to get it.
Yeah.
But you can't get there if you don't do all the other little steps in between.
Yeah. And so, yes, please start supporting people of color, specifically Black women who are doing anti-racism work. Lindsey and I have offered so many resources of those brilliant women. And also make sure that you're bringing into your sphere white women who are modeling to you what it looks like to be taking activism into their work, who are modeling whatever it is that you do. If you're a coach, who's modeling, bringing activism, bringing social justice into their coaching work. Mm-hmm. It's important for us to be seeing each other.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And amplifying and supporting each other.
And especially as you're moving through these phases, because you're going to feel super awkward. Super awkward.
And bringing in, other white women who can be role models to you will help you contain the harm that inevitably occurs as you're waking up. It's kind of like a little bit of a shield. It prevents that harm from going out to people of color that you, I'm assuming, have collected as Pokemons like I did earlier in the framework. And so having, these supportive women around you who you can reach out to and you can ask the questions and you can say, I don't get it. I don't understand this. Help me unpack this. It is so helpful. I know that we keep talking about this, but
it's so important.
It's so important.
How many times do we
every day
send a message to each other? I mean, literally, you're you'll ask me a question. I swear, it's like you already really know, but you're like, no, I need to check myself. So you'll be like, why is it that this, like, so-and-so can do this, but she's white and this and that and blah, 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 or whatever.
Yeah, and I set Lindsey up, right? Because I don't give her any context.
So set me up. And I'm like, where the fuck is this coming from, right?
I give her no context. I'm like, Lindsey, why is it that this person can do this?
Yeah, and I'm like, huh? I'm like, who? Although I don't probably even know the person anyway, because you'll be like, you'll tell me the name. I'm like, oh, I don't know who that is.
And the reason why we haven't been reading from the first framework is because the first one only has 4 levels. And so level 3 is immersion. So it goes back to a similar trajectory as that.
As stage 4 in this framework.
Yeah. Or actually, this is stage 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You're right.
So here, you become informed about oppressed groups and their concerns. You understand the impact of discriminatory practices on the oppressed group. You appreciate positive qualities and values of the oppressed group. You instigate increasing contact with members of oppressed groups. You increase awareness of self as oppressor. You establish collaborative rather than competitive relations with oppressed group. And then for the oppressed side of this, you become more self-appreciating and group appreciating. You increase knowledge about your oppressed group. Your anger increases at the oppression and at the oppressors. And you immerse self in activities that center on your own group, excludes oppressors. So in this stage of immersion for our oppressed identities, this is where we tend to like push out people who are not in that identity. Mm. So if
this again goes back to group thinking, it's like
you're
part of the in group.
You need to
part
be
of the out group.
Because
you have to learn.
Yeah.
So, and you have to feel supported.
Yeah. So this is where, as let's say if I'm coming out in my sexual identity, this is where I may completely push out anyone who's hetero, because I can't right now. I need to be in my own language, in my own group, and really immerse myself in that. This is the stage where people tend to say,
it's a very nourishing stage.
Yeah. I can't be friends with you if you don't hold this identity. Because you really need to be nourished and sustained by your own people. Mm-hmm. And it's important that we allow ourselves the gift of that,
and just the freedom to do so and not look at it as a bad thing.
I think that this is still where I'm at in terms of my identity as a woman. Like I pretty much only surround myself with women. My work is only with women. I tend to only go to events that are women events. I'm kind of still in that space. Like I've made it clear on my social platforms that like I prioritize women over men's comments, and I have no problem deleting men's comments and not even engaging in them. They take up minimal space in my virtual space. So I think that this is where I'm at in terms of my own identity as a woman. I'm not in the integrative stage yet. I'm not there with bringing men back into my life. And I'm okay with that. And I'm okay with being here. But again, it's important to know that this is a phase. And that eventually we need to move from this phase.
It's also important to know that you can move in and out of all of these phases.
Yeah.
As fluid and as necessary, when it's necessary. Like there's freedom in this. You know, hopefully, yes, you will, wake up at a rate that is good. Like I want you to wake up. I mean, you don't have to do it so fast.
Yeah.
But I hope you do it
you gotta keep
quickly.
Going. You gotta keep going. Yeah, we need you.
I want you to stay energized and mobile.
Yes.
I want you to stay in motion.
Yes. Yes.
But yes, so there might be a time where you kind of dip your toe in integration to see if you're ready.
Yeah.
And test out the waters, and you say, oh, I'm not ready yet, so let me dip back into, another phase where I feel more secure.
Yeah. Final stage is called autonomy. In the internalization of a newly defined sense of self as white is the primary task of this stage. The positive feelings associated with this redefinition energize the person's efforts to confront racism and oppression in daily life. Alliances with people of color can be more easily forged in this stage because the person's anti-racist behaviors and attitudes will be more consistently expressed. So this is a great stage to be in because things are not so damn overwhelming. It's like we now are able to know how to operate as white people in the world. We're not as awkward with people of color anymore.
I think that's the biggest thing, right? Is when I say this is going to feel really awkward, it's because you start hitting these phases and growing, and then all of a sudden you feel really awkward.
Yeah.
You can feel really awkward around people of color. I mean, I experience this still because I grew up around so many people of color, like my whole upbringing was very just multicultural.
I think we've heard this.
Yeah.
Multicultural upbringing the billionth time.
Sorry, but I see now how fucking awkward I can feel sometimes.
Yeah.
When I am just in the presence of any person of color, I'm like, oh fuck, I'm white. Fuck, I'm white. What the fuck do I do? Shit. How do I act? What do I say? Fuck, can I say that? I don't know. It's like this whole fucking back and forth in my head. And I'm like, oh my God, Lindsey, you are fucking exhausting right now. Literally. And I get so over like my whiteness and like, I'm just like, fuck. And then that's where I get angry again. Yeah. Because I'm like, why can't I just be fucking normal? Yeah. And I'm like, oh, because I don't fucking know what normal is. Because like, what's normal anymore? Look at our world, you know?
Yeah, so like this is where we get to like really start to develop new relationships based out of like mutual respect and understanding of each other. I mean, this is a really beautiful phase and we can't rush this phase. You know, we really have to work through all the other phases in order to really get here. Mm-hmm. But when you're here, it's just this like sense of like there's no more shame around your whiteness.
Yeah, you're not like carrying it like a bag of bricks anymore behind you. Yeah. Like you're not like pulling it along.
Because you've been actively now starting to do stuff for it. So you're in action. You're the words and the terminology and the concepts are like, you've got it.
It just kind of starts coming out because it's been integrated. It's like, it becomes part of your everyday language. Like, you know, it just is what it is. Like, I don't know, like
I can call myself out as a white person and like laugh at myself and it just becomes lighter. You get to start to breathe again because again, it's not from a place of complacency, but because you've been taking active action.
And you can have conversations and interactions with people of color and not feel as awkward, right?
Yeah. So the level 4 here in this other framework is called integration and activism, and it's privilege and oppression combined, is willing to share personal and public resources, is able to move comfortably between the worlds of both groups. This is important, right? Because as the oppressor and as the oppressed, it's easy for us to want to be in our own group. So here now we can move comfortably. We can be in spaces with men and not feel this sense of they're bad people because they're men, right? We can navigate both of them. We appreciate the value and qualities of both groups, understands social, political, and economic status of both groups, rejects and confronts negative stereotype and discriminatory practices, and here's the kicker, works actively to instigate change toward social justice.
Keep those feet moving.
I mean,
stay mobilized.
This is where it's at. This is the phase that we all want to get to because when we can get to this phase, then we can really get to work because we know how to not make it be about us anymore.
Yeah, it's like our shit. We've worked through our shit about
So now we get to just be there for other people.
And because I know so much of your community is like women, coaches, leaders, other entrepreneurs, right? Because and it's like, it's kind of like we hear it a lot in our own like trainings and things like that. It's like, okay, like once you have worked through a lot of your own shit, you can then start holding space for other people in a bigger capacity because you don't make it about you anymore. Yeah. So it's the same concept here. Yeah. It's like, oh, wow, I can pull back. It's not about me. I don't have to center myself. Yeah. And I don't have to like, you know, utilize all of my weapons of whiteness, like my fragility, my tears to be seen, heard, because it's not about me anymore. I've worked through that. I've let that go.
And of course, like Lindsey and I keep saying, this is a process. This is not an arrival. So of course there's still confusion. Of course there's still hiccups. Of course there's still possibilities of causing harm or a possibility of making a mistake or whatever it is. But in this stage, we're a lot more forgiving to ourselves because we've moved through so much of that shame that we're no longer identifying that just because we made a mistake, that means that we're a bad person. We're able to be like, of course I made a mistake. I carry the lens of whiteness. And like, that's just the way it is. And
I am still actively working on that. And I will continue to learn how to apologize. Yeah. Like that's another phase of development of humanness, right? Is learning how to apologize. Yes. That is, it's a key facet of being human.
And I will say in the autonomy stage, at least, there also is a re-establishment of sovereignty, and some clearer boundaries of what I'm not going to be pushed around anymore just because I am the oppressor. Or like, I'm not going to be pushed around anymore because of the guilt that I'm the oppressed. Like, I have more respect for myself now that like, I know that there are certain things I don't need to participate in to be seen as a good ally. It's like, I don't need to be doing all these things just to appear to everybody else that I'm doing the work, because I feel really solid that I am doing the work in a way that matters, in a way that makes a difference.
And you can stand in a place of complete truthfulness, honesty, and confidence in your own work.
Because I think a lot of what pulls us in the phases is the worthiness wound, is like, I'm inadequate, I'm not doing enough, I need to be doing more, I need to be doing more, I need to be doing more. And in many ways that's a gift, because it's pulling us forward, it's taking us to the next step. And then it gets to the point where like, you've got to do the work of healing your worthiness wound. So you're no longer being pushed and shoved, because guess what? Guess what, Lindsey?
What?
As you're flipping through your pages.
I know, I'm such a student.
People will always think that you can do more. There will always be somebody who thinks that you should be doing more. You should be posting more. You should be speaking up more. You should be attending more rallies. You should be attending more meetings.
You should
be
quit
doing
your
this.
job, and you should only do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
You should,
And at first, that's really annihilating. And you're like, oh my God, I should be doing more. I should be attending all these things. I should be watching every single live that every single person of color does around this. I need to be participating, And we do
I should leave my entire family and my newborn baby and go to the march in Omaha or wherever.
I should drop my grandmother because she's racist and tell her to get out of my house and never talk to her again. So like, we do all these things from a space of because I'm bad. Eventually it gets to the point where you're not bad, where you've done the work of the worthiness wound. And then it's like, I get to do it because I want to be a good person to other people, not because I want to feel not bad anymore. And that's power.
Not because I just don't want to feel bad anymore.
You're doing it because you have a genuine care for other people.
And because you
not because you want to alleviate your own pain.
You learned to hold the complexity of your own pain.
Exactly.
You learned how to hold the fact that, you know what? Yeah, I'm good and bad.
Yeah.
And just because I do bad things doesn't mean that I'm innately a bad human.
Yeah.
True.
Wow, we've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes. We have another framework that we want to talk about, but I think we're going to bring it in to part 4. Because I think
this is already part 4?
No, this is part 3. I think we're going to bring it next time because I think we've information people out.
Yeah, I think so, probably.
I think we've maxed people out. So here's what I want all of you to do now. I want you to be sitting with this framework. I want you to, if you didn't take notes on this, take notes on this. Take notes on the 2 frameworks that we shared, the different stages of each of them. And then really ask yourself, like, where am I in the framework? How does it feel to be in this framework? What did it feel like to be in the previous phase of the framework? Take notes on it because it's going to be so helpful for you when you're collecting your white friends, for you to have some perspective on what their experience is going to be like, and for you to see what the next phase is and start doing the work to get yourself into that next phase so that we can really, be a stand for doing this work.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's it. That's all I've got. I'm burnt out too. This has been a lot of...
I know you read a lot. Sorry.
I'm ready for a nap.
I'm like a slow reader and
I'm the immigrant here. I'm not even a native English speaker.
I know. I mean, look, I have like cognitive brain
there
issues.
It is.
So
it only took an hour and 20 minutes
to get to my mercury poisoning and my lead poisoning.
It usually takes a lot sooner, so I'm pretty impressed with you
it's
taken.
Like our friend sent out this newsletter and she got some backlash on it, and it was her subject line was how do you know someone's vegan? And then her first line of
they'll tell you
within the first few minutes.
Yeah.
And same with like CrossFitters. Like I used to be a wild CrossFitter, and it's like, oh, I own that too. It's like, how do you know I'm a CrossFitter? Because I like introduce myself. Hi, I'm Lindsey. I'm a CrossFitter. Like, my name is Lindsey Rae. I CrossFit.
Now it's a new evolution. She's moved along the framework.
Now I'm like, hi, I'm Lindsey Rae. My pronouns are she and her. What are yours?
And then it's And I have Mercury feelings, so please forgive me if I
forgive
forget what pronouns you just asked me to use.
Oh my gosh, so bad, so bad. I know, but it's like I feel like I'm like, oh, well, this is why I'm so inadequate. It's like justifying my inadequacies. Why do we always feel like we have to do it?
I don't know, because we think that we got to be perfect.
Oh, the patriarchy.
The patriarchy. I'm just going to blame everything on the patriarchy.
It's like,
I've either blamed the patriarchy or I blame my astrology signs.
I mean,
I'm feeling really moody lately. And
you have been blaming it all on this Cancer new moon.
I've been owning my blaming of the Cancer new moon. I'm like, my Venus is in Cancer, and this Cancer new moon is causing me to be all sorts of moody in my interpersonal relationships, and I'm just so sensitive right now.
I swear, last couple days, I swear, it's like I can call it like at a drop of a dime. If I say something, and because like we use Marco Polo a lot, and like we like video chat each other back and forth, and it's like I'll say something, I'll be like, oh my gosh, Thais, give it 5 seconds. She's gonna watch this, and she's gonna be like, I mean, I take that really personally. Like, I can't believe you said that about me because, and I'll be like, Thais, I love you.
Okay, first off,
stop.
I take things personally, which, by the way, is why the fact that I've been going through these phases is so impressive. Not impressive to me. I'm not giving myself cookies. Impressive in the sense that I've been able to do this work even with a deep knowing that I have the propensity of taking all these things very personal.
Thais is an only child, people.
So,
okay, this is ingrained deep.
So if this is possible for me, someone who's sensitive, hypersensitive, who, intellectualizes everything, and I've been able to really tend to my worthiness wound and really, really do this work in a way that feels very meaningful, then really anyone can do it.
Yeah, I mean, possible. I've got my own slew of issues.
Oh, well, that's an understatement.
I take that really personally.
Why
would you say that about me on the podcast in front of all these people?
I'm gonna go before I slap Lindsey.
I'm sorry. Was that too personal?
Yeah. I'm feeling attacked right now.
Too much of a personal What is it? What is it when you imitate someone?
You mimic? I don't know.
Oh, I don't know.
Well,
any more lion's mane?
We're gonna go. We're getting a little dizzy over here.
What did I say at breakfast? Breakfast was like 3 hours ago, which I'm so hungry. But didn't I say we were going through all of our notes from school? Because from all of our reading, like we are good students and we like review our reading together, so we make sure we're like integrating and comprehending everything. And I was like, I feel like my brain is doing backflips right now.
Yes, you did say that.
And now we're 3 hours later. I'm hungry, and we've talked about all this.
We gotta go. We gotta go because
Lindsey is fried. I'm gonna combust right now. It's happening. That's the sound of self-combustion, people.
All right, we'll be back with part 4 in a few weeks to talk about another framework that we found to be really helpful in navigating our white privilege. I hope this was of service to you. We do involve humor as a way to lighten a little bit of the heaviness of this topic. I hope that that's appreciated. Lindsey and I just love to have fun and poke fun at each other.
Yeah.
But we're not diminishing the importance of this work. And we really hope that if you're needing support, that you feel comfortable in reaching out to those who can support you and hold you, because we need each other. We need you. The world needs us to come together and really begin to change the ways that we've been upholding these systems that really marginalize and oppress humans, each other.
Yeah.
And it's time to do better. And when we know better, we do better.
So listen, let's hold hands. Let's stick together. Let's not forget our humanity.
Yeah.
And let's do this. We can do this.
We can do this.
We can do hard things.
We can do hard things.
We're going to hold hands. We're going to stick together. We're going to love on each other.
And we're going to do hard things.
And we're going to do fucking hard things.